Let's speak now to Bill van Esveld from Athens. He's an Associate Director for Children's Rights at Human Rights Watch. Welcome to the programme, Bill. Talk to us about the intergenerational damage that this incredible statistic that nearly a quarter of the world's children can't read or even count.
Yeah, the United Nations and other children's rights groups have found that the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic due to school closures, partial school closures, and the lack of access to distance learning for, most children in poorer and lower income countries, and poorer children in rich countries as well, has been unprecedented. The UN is saying this is the worst education crisis in history. No exaggeration, because of the number of children impacted who have been out of school and the impact on the learning of the kids, even the ones who are officially still in school. And so this, there's got to be an enormous wake-up call here. And it's not something, of course, that the United Nations can do by itself. The United Nations has humanitarian agencies that do the best they can, but it's really up to the political will of countries that are members of the UN, but also especially those countries and the way they behave towards their children at home. It is unprecedented. In just South Africa, 500,000 children have dropped out of school and have not come back. And we're going to see that kind of statistic replicated in country after country as more data comes in. Education has got to be at the heart, the center of government's rebuilding plans after COVID. We have to reach out.
And do you hear that, Bill? Do you hear it when you listen to government policy where they talk so much about getting the economy back, building back better? There's all these slogans that get bandied around, but do you hear that our children's education needs to be at the forefront of our policies?
In a few cases, there have been, a few good examples to highlight of what countries, even countries with very minimal resources, not rich places, what they've been able to do to reach out to their kids and to get them learning. Some case studies from Sierra Leone, some from Kerala in India, and a few other places. But in general, by and large, unfortunately not. I think we are absolutely seeing governments fail to put their children first, which means failing to put the future of their own country first. Absolutely. I mean, education is such a no-brainer. It is the best investment you can make, not just in your economy, but in your people and in stability and security. It's crazy that we're not seeing that. But, there's simple things that could be done. Reach out to the kids who have dropped out of school. Make sure that high school, secondary school is free and accessible. Make sure that poorer students have access to the internet. And most importantly, start reopening schools safely. There's all sorts of guidance on how to do it safely so that kids aren't getting sick, teachers aren't getting sick, and families aren't getting transmission of COVID. This is possible to do, but it's got to be prioritized because the kids who can't go to school and who can't access distance learning were marginalized and discriminated against and losing out even before COVID. And it's much, much worse now.
Bill, I mean, we've spoken so much on this program, and heard, you can't, like you said, you can't get broadband, you can't get a digital education, and you can't get an iPad to children living, in some very difficult parts of the world. But talk to us, about the MENA region, an area that you specialize in. How do the challenges compare to other parts of the world? And if I could also talk about, Israel and Gaza, the differences you see there, for example, in a 10-year-old child.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's a couple statistics. One is that globally, you just mentioned 10-year-old children. Globally, before the pandemic, they were doing not so great, but now 70% of them can't read or do basic math. So it's gotten, way worse because of the pandemic. In the Middle East and North Africa region, 40% of children could not do any distance learning, any meaningful distance learning at all, because they didn't have access to those devices. And I mean, I used to live and work in Israel and Palestine, and the difference between being in Tel Aviv and being in Gaza City, which are very close to each other geographically, but in terms of the lived experience of children and their access to education, they could be on different planets. But it's not just even in extreme situations of oppression and apartheid, like in Israel and Palestine. It's also within rich countries. I mean, when you sort of break down, or not rich countries, in any country, when you break down statistics and you look at, say, India, of the poorest kids in India, something like 49% are out of school. Whereas the wealthiest kids in India, only about 7 or 8% are out of school. So we all have lots of work to do. This is work that should begin with our own governments at home. We need much more equality in education because, again, the kids who are losing out, marginalized even before COVID, they're out now. We have got to proactively reach out and bring them back, or they're gone for good.
That's very sad indeed that they're gone for good. This is a discussion I'd like to talk to you about another day if we can. Bill van Esveld from Human Rights Watch, thank you so much for speaking to us on this very important subject.